Hello, my name is Zdorovtsov, and I'm a Community Development Field Specialist with SDSU Extension. Thank you for watching this iGrow podcast on extending your growing season into the school year utilizing frost protection. Of course, the challenge is that during the school year, we only have the spring and the fall, which is not the peak growing time. The summer season is. But what can we do to extend that growing season into the school year so that students can utilize the garden? Additionally, in the spring, it takes a while to warm up, and in the fall, our frosts come early in South Dakota. So again, we have a limited time frame as to when we can use our school garden. I will mention this fact sheet that we have available on iGrow.org that references our fall frost dates and our spring frost-free dates. For example, when you look at this map, you can see that locations such as Custer, Hill City, and Kyle have a 50% chance of frost by September 8th through the 15th. It comes very early in the fall. Other locations such as Huron, Mission, Rapid City, Sioux Falls, and Watertown are later in the month, the end of September, around the 24th through the 30th. This fact sheet will help you isolate your location and determine when your frost dates are so you can schedule your plantings and be aware of when frost may become an issue. So let's go over some techniques that will help protect against the cold temperatures. Grandma's method, the old blanket and sheets approach, really will work as long as the fabric remains dry. If water is absorbed, evaporative cooling will occur, and this will lead to colder temperatures adjacent to the blanket. Blankets do need to be removed during the daytime as light cannot penetrate through the blanket. And additionally, we want the soil to recharge daily, so removing the blanket will allow that soil to warm up and then it can be covered again at night. Row covers are a film or a sheet that are used to cover the plant. Typically, they're transparent or a semi-transparent cloth. You can see there in the images. Water, air, and sunlight are allowed to pass through this cloth, so you don't have to remove them in the daytime. And they'll offer approximately 2 to 8 degrees of frost protection. Now, when you hear the phrase low tunnel, this is a system that's supported by hoops, such as what's photoed in the Michigan State University photo. The term floating row cover means draping over the plant canopy. The University of Wisconsin photo there shows this. There are 2 different types of row covers primarily. Spunbonded looks like a dryer sheet material. Common brand, Remay, is also what some people call this product. They come in different weights, so look for something that's 0.5 to 1 ounce per square yard. This weight will allow enough light to come through, yet it will still insulate your crops. Air and water will pass freely through the fabric, and it is recommended for putting over hoops. Besides protection from cool temps, row covers also have other benefits. They can reduce wind and weather damage, but they also can provide a physical barrier blocking insects. People use it for pest control to block things like flea beetles and grasshoppers and cucumber beetles and squash bugs, as well as rabbits. Plastic is another type of material that can be used. 4 mil clear plastic is a good weight. Plastic must be ventilated because it can get extremely warm underneath the plastic. Perforated plastic can be purchased, and generally you will see something that has 3/8 inch holes, about 74 holes per square foot. Otherwise, you can cut 2-inch holes in the side of the tunnel and put a hole about every 2 to 3 foot along the side for venting. You could also cut slits in the top of your plastic, but keep in mind you'd have to close those slits with clothespins or something to make sure that the cold air doesn't seep in. Plastic generally has less frost protection than a solid cover, and plants will freeze if they touch the plastic. How are row covers held down? Well, they can be stapled or attached to your board or frame, especially if you're using a raised bed type system. If you're in the ground, you could bury the edges of your plastic. You could find some kind of a weight. You could fill a hose or use bags of soil or blocks, or some other weight that would hold down the sides. There are also pins that you could use to penetrate through the cloth and then push them down into the ground. And it's recommended that you attach one side first and then pull the cover over to the other side to make sure it's good and tight. The problem with row covers, well, they're very labor intensive. You have to get them all buried down or held down, and then you have the issue of wind, which can come in and blow your fabric right off the top of your garden. They may create too much heat, especially plastic, so be absolutely sure that you're venting plastic. And keep in mind that though you may be using row cover to block insects, you could also be blocking pollinators. Bees would not be able to transfer the pollen in vining crops such as cucumbers and melons. So you'll have to remove plastic or your row cover, plastic or spunbonded, when pollinators start to need to come in to pollinate those small little cucumbers and melons. Weeds may also proliferate under these fabrics. There are mini hoop houses. These are larger low tunnel systems. Similar idea, but they're larger. They may be movable, but they're big enough typically to be able to crawl into the space without having to move or remove the plastic. These will generally extend your season by 4 to 5 weeks. They are unheated. The structures are generally 4 to 8 foot tall and 5 to 10 foot wide. The hoops are made usually of conduit, plastic or metal, and then covered with spun-bonded row cover or plastic. This trial out of Fort Collins, Colorado was interesting. They found quite a bit of success just by simply stringing Christmas lights inside of their low tunnel. This would work great in a school garden. The kids would probably think it's fun. They utilized a 25 light string of mid-sized Christmas lights in a 4 by 5 foot tunnel, and it gave 6 to 18 degrees of protection. And they hung those Christmas lights just on the frame under the plastic, turned them on at dusk, and turned them off at dawn. They also added a blanket over the lights and the plastic, and were able to achieve 18 to 30 degrees protection. So it really warmed up the growing space. You could provide protection to individual plants with individual covers. Cloches are a product that's either made of glass or plastic, and it's a little mini greenhouse that you put around the plant. They can be purchased, or you could simply reuse a plastic container, something like a pop bottle, over the top of the plant. Now, transparent plastic is the best. Cloches typically will provide 3 to 4 weeks of protection, and usually you're going to use this in the spring. You're going to put it over a tender transplant that you move out into the garden. So you'd be able to transplant your peppers or tomatoes a few weeks early. On hot days, you will want to unscrew the lid or take off the lid to allow it to vent. Otherwise, it'll get too warm in there. You can also purchase other products such as Wall of Water, and this is a baffled plastic chamber. Those chambers are filled with water, and they create heat inside of the plastic protector. These will keep a few degrees of heat in there. You're able to start your transplants earlier. Do keep in mind that if you have early, fast-growing varieties such as tomatoes, they may grow too fast and grow out of the top. And if anything does get exposed to the outer air, it would be susceptible to frost damage. A cold frame is a protected plant bed that does not have any artificial heat. Most are constructed of wood and have a hinged cover. Glass windows make a great cover, but they're heavy and breakable, and that wouldn't work probably very well in a school garden situation. The children would have trouble lifting those lids. You could make a different cover out of a plexiglass or even use a double layer of clear plastic, and that'll probably be more durable for you. The kids will be able to lift the lids more easily. They should be hinged because heat can build up in there, and you may need to prop the lids open to allow cool air in. And it's very important on sunny days that you check the temperature, or they'll get too warm inside. And some catalogs will offer a temperature-controlled frame hinge that will automatically open and close to vent your frame. You'll want to locate your cold frame in a place where it has a southern exposure for maximum sunlight. And you'll want to put in a windbreak of some sort to the north or northwest side of your cold frame. And they work best if they have natural drainage underneath. They can warm up your plants, the air in there, 5 to 10 degrees. And at night, keep in mind you could put a blanket over the top if you are concerned about it getting too cold. But this type of a setup is perfect for starting transplants or growing smaller cool season crops such as salad greens. Finally, I'll mention high tunnels. We see this more in commercial production, but it may work in a school garden situation. It's a big structure though. It's basically like a greenhouse without artificial heat, and there's no artificial ventilation, so no fans inside or forced air tubes. You vent your high tunnel by rolling up the sides, and plants in this facility are usually grown in the ground versus on benches that you would see in a greenhouse. Now this has really made strides. You can grow earlier in the spring, typically 4 to 8 weeks earlier, and go 2 to 5 weeks later in the fall. So it really can add a bit of time to your growing season. If you do have any other questions on this topic, feel free to contact me or visit iGrow.org. And thanks again for watching this podcast.